speaker is a friendly and familiar face to our industry. Hugh is the wild blueberry specialist at Perennia, and his role is to support the growth and development of the wild blueberry industry in Nova Scotia. Hugh is also the primary contact for cranberries as well. Hugh has 2 undergraduate degrees and completed his Master of Science from Dalhousie Faculty of Agriculture, and his graduate research focused on vegetation management in Nova Scotia wild blueberry fields. So welcome, Hugh.
Well, good morning, everyone. I hope you enjoy this new setup in this meeting room. I think this is the first time we have a new way of interact with each other. I think I like it because you can talk to people. But for me, I feel it's a longer walk from that corner get up here. So anyways, so I was hoping to show you a very hopeful or maybe green or pink blueberry stem photo. But yesterday when I get to the field, the field was covered in snow again, but it was pretty. Looks like a Christmas again. So today I was hoping to give you some updates on this upcoming 2026 crop fields. And when we're talking about this year's crop, we are using this 2-year production cycle, so we should be looking at this 15, 16, almost 16 months window of how they experienced the drought last year in the summer and then how they recover in the fall. Also, this past 3 months, how do they do? Are they doing okay? I think so. And updates on the spring management based on what I want to share with you, some of our observations, feedback. We talked to different growers, researchers, and their feeling about the blueberry field. So I just want to give you some of those information and help with your spring management. And also there's this clethodim herbicide. I think I've been trying to give you an update every single winter meeting. And this year, I think we have something hopeful to come. Okay, so for the sprout plant, I just want to show you in this kind of month-by-month timeline. So we start with May, and the blueberry really didn't really start emerge until probably early or mid-May. And from that point of time, I think this period of time, we should say they did pretty well from the plant emergency and development. And this time they are trying to expand their leaf and start to grow their shoots. So all those resources we have last spring was pretty decent. So nothing really feels awful along. And actually, last year's herbicide and weed management probably was the best year I've ever seen. During the summertime, there's pretty much no weed in the field. And this little yellow star here, I try to show is the point we didn't receive any single much of a significant rainfall. So from that point, I think we should say there's something going on with July, August, that 80 growing season, but because at that time we are kind of focusing on crop field last year, and there's not much of observation or feedback from the sprout field. However, when we look back now, I think we should think what went wrong during that time of the year when they try to grow their leaves and shoots and etc. So this time of year, July, August is a pretty active growing period for blueberries because they try to hardening and thickening their stems, trying to grow from vegetatively to start to producing fruit back for next year. So they're getting ready. They need to produce or reserve a lot of these resources for the upcoming fall and winter and this fruit production year. So when sprout plants were experiencing the drought between July and August, I know there could have some morning dew or some moisture coming in, but really that time of year, they didn't have that experience in the past. So they kind of getting into that drought dormancy. They start to conserve their energy and then resources to try to survive. And they're going to wait for the conditions to improve. So, but because of that, they are not actively growing. They are not doing much of a photosynthesis. So you are going to so they have a shorter stems or maybe a thinner blueberry patches you're going to see because the leaves are not expanding. And basically because they are with no water or they are not taking up much of a fertilizer you put in the early season. So from this period of time, I think that our biggest concern is because they have low photosynthesis. So you're kind of getting that they are not going to have much of a higher growth reserve like before in the last few years. every summer was pretty decent, with moisture, with good growing conditions for this time of year for the sprouts. But this past year, I think this was our biggest concern on the blueberry plants reserve. And then we're getting into September, October, and that's the time of the year we start to realize, okay, our focus should go back to the sprout fields now because something looks awfully long in a sprout field. And that's the time of year I start getting some growers call and then also went to some sprout fields. And then the concerns on sprout fields start to rise. Particularly in the Cumberland fields. And what we saw at that time was we saw plant deaths and also a lot of diseases that typically show up in a dry year that include, fomentous cankers or some of the very brown, reddish stems sticking into the middle of a field. In the normal year, just maybe one or two, but this past summer, you're going to see them in patches like this one I show in this photo, and including other diseases. So what this is concerning me is, and last fall when we saw this, something was immediately came to my mind is, if this is becoming a common thing, what we're going to see is something. Yes, you're going to see some winter damage on some stems, but if it's because plant death or because of severe diseases, you are going to see a lot of those consistent black or dead stems in between of healthy clones. And that's what concerns me yesterday when I saw this first field I checked and a small patch is showing up like this. Nobody, because I monitor that field every spring and I don't see that, but I'm not going to make a conclusion that's the case because of a lot of plant death or plant disease infection. Because that was his first field, and I'm going to start investigation on that. But I would encourage you to see if that's the case in your field, because normally if it's just one or two winter killed stems, you are not going to see this kind of picture. So that would be something I encourage you to pay attention to. And when we get into the September, October, yes, a sprout field look awful, and we are very, very concerned their crop potential for next year. But luckily, some of the significant rainfall start to arrive towards the end of September, especially in October. And I'm going to show you some of the figures here. And that was pretty timely for the bug initiation and development. And I found this detailed review by one of the UK professor. And in this paper, she studied a lot of information about blueberry fruit bug formation and development. I picked up 4 very good points. I think will answer some of our questions. In normal year, yes, if we have good resources for blueberry fields, they are probably going to start to develop fruit bugs maybe end of August, September, when the conditions are perfect. But last year, because blueberries were stressful, they are not trying to grow fruits because they don't know what's coming up next. But once they sense lots of rain are coming or coming, they start to encourage themselves to grow. And really, when would be the good time for the bug initiation and development? So blueberry fruit bug, they only atypically to occur under the short days and long nights only. And I checked some of our local timing. So that is roughly after mid-September. In this point, you can say, yes, I should be concerned some of the early September or maybe late October time, I normally would see my fruit bugs, but last year I didn't. Yes, that was concern, but theoretically, they are only atypically produce the fruit bug after mid-September. So that's a good timing because the rain start coming after end of September, especially during October time. So this graph here just kind of show you some of the significant rainfall we have in last year. And the second point is some of the high temperature or water shortage are going to reduce your fruit bug initiation and result a smaller fruit bug formation. I think that's a pretty significant point because that's what they experienced last year because the hot temperature and water shortage, the bugs are small, they are late. And if we do get some cold temperature during the nighttime, then that's helpful, which I couldn't recall if that's the case for last fall, but I'm going to leave that there. And the last point is the number of fruit bugs pursued is related to the number of days of good weather you have for the fruit bug initiation period. That's a very good and encouraging point because what we are going to have in the next October and November was actually one of the best fall I have experienced in the last few years because the fall continued to getting into very late November. for the blueberry to grow. So after we have the fruit bud formation and development after October, then getting into the fall, you have a fruit bud development, and also plants are getting too ready for the winter. So in the fall, this past fall, we actually have a very nice fall 4 months, almost perfect. So you are seeing, we normally don't see blueberries are this red if you don't do multiple fungicide application. But last year, end of November, we are still seeing very beautiful fields. And this is a very good sign for the blueberries because they are using this window to continue their fruit bud formation and then to getting size up. Also, the photosynthesis continues, so the sugar production continues, and they are able to bring those losses back from this past drought summer. And they are getting ready for their winter dormancies once they start getting sense that temperature is dropped. So in the fall, that was a pretty nice time, and then also the winter start early with some cool temperatures, so they can get into a dormancy earlier than previous years, because in the previous few years we have very warm fall and warm early winter, and they couldn't really get into dormancy until probably late December. But this past December was pretty nice condition, and that would put the blueberry stems into deep dormancy, or a better dormancy to protect them. And as you just mentioned, you could have a business, showing your blueberry fields, and that's one of the field we have last fall, circling through Facebook, and then I took it here. It's actually very, very nice blueberry field in blueberry season in the last fall. So I'm getting into the last few months, and we were very, very concerned and worried about our winter because the blueberries are already kind of weak after the drought, and if we have a bad winter or anything went wrong, and I think it's going to be a very bad year for 2026. However, I think we are pretty lucky in terms of so far now the winter is almost done, and there's a couple of things we can look into. What do they need during winter time to make sure they have a good productive year? So in order for blueberries to have a good winter or getting ready for a new fruit production season, they need to meet their certain chilling requirement hours. And this, as I just mentioned, we start getting into some cold temperature early December, so that's no problem for this year. But in the last few years, we've been tracking those numbers, trying to see if that's a reasonable time. And then some of the research that Scott and his student are doing now is kind of confirming maybe 1,000 would be a good time, good number to compare. But I'm going to leave there because that's not a point. The point is, I think the shading requirement was met for this year's blueberry plants. And we also need to concern about our winter temperature. So once we get into winter temperature, if the well dormant plants, they can withstand as low as -25. And then if you have some fruit buds stuck on top of snow, then those could be -20. But again, you need to see how long the cold duration is. And we did have a few of cold events in this past winter. So first one was between January 24th and 25th. The forecast says the Saturday morning is supposed to be the coldest, but it was not. It was actually fine, but when we get to Sunday, the temperature start looking very scary. If I zoom in to two areas, you're going to see one area that's around the Birds, Belmont area, and then that's around Pashbro and Cannon Mountain area. And you're getting into more, I'm going back. So if you look at here, there's a -27. I think that's a Belmont weather station. So when I saw this, that's very, very concerning because I didn't know how much snow they have in that field at that time. And also that those numbers there, they just look scary to me. And also we have another few ones, January 29th, and in Oxford, again, in the Belmont area, and Truro, some of the cold evenings. So really, I couldn't really track each region, but the question is, if they have snow coverage in the field, I think that's fine. There's not much concern. So we start asking, what are the average blueberry stem lengths is? So we are looking 5 to 10 inches, but that's kind of on the reserve side. We also have some very good productive field. They can reach 12, 16, 15, or higher than that. But I'm only going to use 5 to 10 inches in this year because I just mentioned this past summer, the blueberry plant, they didn't grow as tall as before from our observation. So that might be a benefit in this winter. and how much snow dips in your field. So before those core events I showed before January 24th, 25th, we took a look at the snowfall coverage or snow dips in Nova Scotia. At that time, before the core event, we are looking 4 to 6 inches. That's a little bit risky because we are looking 5 to 10. So, but first one I checked was the Belmont side. I checked with the station owner, Peter, or his neighbor. They said they have tons of snow cover the field. That makes me feel better. But still, and then this is probably not going to be good enough because the February is probably it's going to be colder from our weather trend. So, but February was actually a very decent, active, higher impact winter storm month, and that brings a lot of mix of heavy snow. I think we should call that probably a Monday storm winter for 2026. And just this morning, I also took a look of some of snow coverage in the field. I think up in the Cobequid Mountain, you are still looking at about 12, 14 inches of snow up there. I think the spring will be a little bit later for those areas. But in terms of Truro or other areas, I went to those fields. You can get into the field now. But just on that, I think the snowfall is no concern for this past winter, and including our winter temperature. Yeah, there are a little bit of some of the low ones, but I think everything just perfectly met for this past winter for the wild blueberry dormancy. However, I think I'm more worried about March, April, once they get into this deaccumulation stage and they start losing their core hardness and prepare for growth. And 2 weeks ago, I think we have some pretty decent warm weather. So I think that's the time blueberry start waking up. And if you go to the field now, if you start seeing some of the blueberry stems on the bottom of the stem that they start to green up, I think that's a sign you can start to do your stem collection if you need to check your blueberry. And I think that's a good sign to tell you they are start to waking up. As I mentioned, I'm worried about once the snow is gone, some snow are gone, and then you have all the blueberry stems stuck on top of field, and if you get some cold temperature, that'll be a very bad thing. And I hope that doesn't happen, because they are very vulnerable to winter kill or low temperature at this time. Okay. The 2026 crop outlook. So based on all the information we gather or we heard from growers and the fields, the response in the fall and this winter, I think my biggest concern will be the lower sugar reserve, which means they have a shorter stem and they couldn't use as much of fertilizer or soil fertility that you put in the beginning of a sprout year. And the fruit bug productivity, that'll be a big concern as well. And we have presentation this afternoon. We can hear more on details about that. But I still think the fruit bug productivity I'll be concerned because some of stems, the fruit bugs are kind of small, and that's the field I usually monitor, and it's pretty heavy input field, and the fruit bugs are kind of little small. I don't know if that's going to impact the yield because we're going to mention why I don't think that's probably not going to be end of world because we are looking at fruit bugs. If they get proper pollination, I think you can still get to your average or below about your average if every single flowers are pollinated well or visited by the bees as many times as they can during those good pollination weather. And the leaf diseases will be another one I think is also hurting the plants and the plant death. But thinking about leaf disease, you can think about that like leaf rust or maybe some of septoria you normally would have during a wet year. So that kind of like maybe cancels out some of the losses or the percentage reduction here. So my thinking for 2026 crop potential, yes, the growing conditions are improving in the fall and winter, and also plant health seems to be improving as well. But I think, as I mentioned there, I think they are pretty unpredictable and unstable, and we don't really know what's going on inside the plants and the bugs. So I say close monitoring and timely crop years input will be more important than any year because you need to see if those bugs, as soon as you can get into the field, see the stems are okay, fruit bugs are fine, nothing looks too terribly long, then you want to start getting into your management season. I put a note here about sugar maple producers here to remind myself because a few days ago I was chatting with some growers. They said they have a pretty good sugar or maple syrup season. This year, all the sugar maple trees seems to be produced fine, or the yield seems to be good there. So from a tree's perspective, I think they are doing okay, and I hope that's the same thing for wild blueberries for this year. As I mentioned, I just want to use those information and kind of tell you a few important things you can start to prepare for the next 2 months, really, before pollination season. That's where the time frame I'm looking at before the pollination season. So I think you should go to the field as soon as you get into to the field to do some field scouting, and then maybe pick up a few stems from the field and see what they look like. As I mentioned, I think they are ready to be picked if they can get into the field. They are all like start to growing up on the bottom, but maybe more on the top of Copico Mountain. But at least on the lowland, I think you can start getting into the field now. And how to do that? So just go to the field, randomly collect some stems from the field, but you might want to pay attention to some of your concerning spots or troublesome spots, like the lower spots or with ice damage or maybe wind damage prone areas. Just try to see if those would make a difference between those healthy stems where are more protected. And I usually would do 20 stems in a W pattern and maybe more, because yesterday I just got 25 from some of the fields, and you can just put them into the water and see how they develop in the next little bit while. So yeah, once you get your stem, once they start to develop, you can start counting some of the numbers to see if the blueberry stems or your field productivity is going to be the same, or how do you make your management decision. And here, first one we can look at is how many fruit bag numbers are per stem. And some of the numbers we are kind of looking at, and I know this is kind of a very big range between 6 to 12, but because we are looking at low input, medium input, and some of the high input field altogether, so we're kind of thinking, yes, that's kind of the range of fruit bags we currently have in majority of Nova Scotia's field. But they are also stem height dependent. So if you have a 10 centimeter stem, you are only going to probably get 2.5 or 3 fruit buds. But if you have longer stem, of course, you're going to get more. But as I mentioned, the stem length seems to be a concern to me. So I don't know if that's going to be a factor for you to see fewer fruit buds. So that certainly will be something I will be doing the first once you see a stem to check how many fruit bud numbers are per stem. And usually we would say if you get a 4 to 5 per stem, that's a pretty good number. And I can explain why in a second about those 4 to 5 fruit buds. If they do well, they get pollinated well, they are excellent berries as well. If you see fruit bud below 3 bucks per stem, I think that would be a concern. And I think I would encourage you to get in touch and we can go to the field and see what's going on there. But I don't want to see something below 3, or if you have some winter kill or damage on the top, that might be a different story. But you don't want to be below that number of honesty in the business. And to distinguish the leaf bugs and fruit bugs, if we are in May or June now, it's probably easier to see those are fruit bugs, those are leaf bugs. But this time of year, they all look pretty much the same. And the fruit bugs are maybe a little bit bigger, but there are some small fruit bugs that you might miscount. So to count the leaf bugs, they are usually late developed, so they are a little bit small and narrow. They are usually sticky on the lower part of the stem. The fruit bugs, they are rounder, bigger, and they are usually starting from the upper part of the stem. Usually the first two on the top of stem, those are the first few that will produce first in the previous fall. So that kind of helpful tips to help you to distinguish the two bugs there. Okay, and then we're getting into the size of the fruit bug. If you are really interested you are trying to do some kitchen experiment, you can weigh those fruit bugs. I have those 3 jars there from 3 sites already. I don't think I'm going to weigh them, but if you want to try to see how what's the weight of your fruit bugs, some of the commercial wild fruit bug mass that Dr. Harrison mentioned last fall was around 6.3 milligram, and then if you look at some of the research or high bush one, they are heavier. But I would say the best way is to compare to your own field and compare to your own memory. You understand your fruit bugs of your stems better than anyone. So I say, go to your field and then see if they look the same, or where do you see the problem is, and hopefully we can figure it out or see if anything can be improved or to save, or maybe to input more to save that loss. And for us, so throughout the season, we'll try to go to different sites to collect some of us stems from fields that I is extremely concerned because last year's drought will hit Cumberland West and some of the fields are very, very bad. And I'm thinking those fields will be the ones that needs more attention on this. In terms of other areas like Pictou, or maybe if you go to some other Cape Breton fields, they might be doing fine because they blueberry plants are pretty resilient, and also they have a very shallow root system. So once you get a little bit of moisture into the ground, they can use it very quickly, better than corn or other field crops. And I will report those observation updates through the Wild Blueberry virtual meeting that's coming in April, May, and June every 2 weeks. If you haven't registered or you try to register, there's a QR code, but there's going to be a different communication going out. I don't think you're going to miss the registration. And the last one is dissection bugs. I don't think I'm going to count the. I'm going to wait. I don't think I'm going to weigh the bugs, but I don't think I'm going to dissection the bugs too. But I think that's a very interesting experiment to do. And this is the video from YouTube, and I just want to show this here about why I say the 5-6 bugs are good if you have their good pollination and they can develop into berries. So each fruit bud would contain about 5 to 6 flower initials. So those 5-6 flower initials, they will develop into individual fruit, and individual fruit will get into the individual flowers and then getting into the fruit stage. Also, you also have the winter kill concern, as I mentioned, when we get into the March or May, there could be high wind or some of the cold winds that is going to damage your stems as well. Okay. Oh, yes. I keep thinking about this 5 to 6 flower initial because I want to introduce the concept, but I think it's in the pollination slide. Sorry. Okay. So when we get into the crop field management upcoming for April, May, I think stem health and fruit bud productivity are still going to be a very high concern. But that's very hard for us to tell. You can only count their stem lengths, the fruit bud numbers. But if you want to do more in-depth analysis, you might need to go to use some of the lab equipment. I don't think we are in that desperate to do that kind of deep analysis. But this afternoon, we can hear some of the introduction or updates from Dr. Harrison. My concern will be on the monolinear bright. A couple of reasons, because the bugs are weak, and also we have a lot of snow in the field, and it feels like going to be pretty wet spring coming up, and that's all create a perfect condition for monolinear bright. Last year, the monolinear bright was actually the most severe we have over the last few years. So that will also create some of the mummy berries or maybe some of the further infection into the nearby field. So I'm concerning monolinear bright like any years, especially this year feels like probably going to be a very standard maritime spring weather coming up. So I think that is going to create a very big challenge for the monolinear bright. And so I'll encourage you to do your crop monitoring and weather monitoring on the crop stage, and also some of the information you can hear from us about monolinear management. And this is a new tool I'm going to introduce this afternoon about the wild blueberry management tool. That tool can help you to track your field by field crop stages and how to manage your monolinear bright and botrytis bright, and also monitor your field conditions. So stay for lunch and stay for this introduction about this tool. Okay, here gets the slide I want to talk about. So I can mention each fruit bud, they contain 5 to 6 initials, and each flower will get into the one fruit. One proper fruit development requires about 6 to viable seeds. So they need to be visited by bees multiple times to get to that. And they might get to 60, that's a max you can get in a wild blueberry berries. So in order to for all those fruit buds to be developed and to be produced as heavy berries, you need to have a pollination into those flower buds. So those numbers shows you here, and also you'll talk about and also Patrick talk about the economy side on that pollination. But really on here, I'm just trying to show it's pretty important. Each fruit bud gets as many visits by bees as possible. And if you are getting 10, 15 viable seeds, that's going to give you pretty decent large berries. But if you are less than 6, they're going to be small and they're going to be dropped and premature. That's on this year's crop fields. And I don't want to forget about our upcoming sprout fields too. So last year they have a pretty tough summer. They used all their energy they can to produce berries, and they were pretty rough summer. A good thing is because the rain came late September and October, so they actually started to regrow in late fall. When we went to the field, some of the blueberries just looks very fresh. So that tells me that the rhizomes are fine, the blueberries are not dead. So that's a very good information. And the snow coverage this past winter just perfect. My concern on the sprout field coming to spring would be when they would emerge. Are they going to emerge the normal time, normal speed? Are they going to develop the same pattern that we saw before? That would be my concern. Timing, because that can tell you are they getting impacted by the drought last year in terms of how they regenerate into a new cycle. So I would encourage you, when you see your sprout field start to getting some sprouts, maybe monitor to see if they are developing in the normal way, or the timing you normally would do your venture or crystal. That would be a good time to see if blueberry plants are all up by that time. That's beginning of June. And I encourage you, if you have some money or want to have some input, granular fertilizer could be a good idea for your sprout field, because they need some boost or some recover from last year's drought, and the more nutrients they can get to recover their rhizome, recover their roots, and their plants, that'll be better. Okay, coming to the last one, clethodim herbicide update. So this herbicide will be mentioned. This is an 80 ingredient. We've been mentioning about this, trying to get them to your hand, to blueberry field, to manage hail fescue for so many years. It's a very effective and economy hail fescue management product in both sprout and crop fields. You can think about that like post or venture, but it has another function on hail fescue. And currently, I'm here different things. Arrow all-in, select clethodim 360 EC, Enderus 360, and as well. This one was new. I just heard that 2 months ago, but I did see their labels already, so that's a good thing too. So we are talking about those 4 products are registered in Canada with Health Canada, so you can use if you are just going to manage in, say, in Nova Scotia, you sell berries to nearby farmers market. I don't think that's going to be a concern now. You can use those products to manage it. But if you are, and also it depends if they are available in local stores. So I have checked select clethodim 360 EC and also the Enderus label. All 3 of them had low bush blueberries on the labels now. That means you can legally use it in Canada, and if they're available in your local stores. But if you sell your berries to processors, that'll be your responsibility to check with your processors. I heard from Wyman's growers. I think Wyman, they approve clethodim in the sprout last year, but this year they also approved the sprout and crop fields to use clethodim products. I haven't heard from Oxford or Minas because they are updating their list. So once I know that, or you probably get that before me, please check with your processors about this product. Okay, Scott might talk about this afternoon about the management of fescue, but just on clethodim hair fescue management side, when do you use it or how do you use it? As I mentioned, you can use it like post or venture. So in a sprout year, if you mix clethodim with your pre-emergency tank, so that would be like Spartan or Chiquera Ignite, those things, you could target hair fescue, because the hair fescue right now, this hair fescue was from yesterday, so they are just green, and you might have some opportunity to use curb at this stage too. But if you put that clethodim with your pre-emergency herbicide tank, yes, you are going to get hair fescue, but you're going to miss some of the late warm grasses like maybe poppy oak grass or veg grass. You are not going to get that because they are not going to emerge yet. However, if you add it into your post-emergency tank with your crystal, you're going to get some of your late grasses, but you're going to miss the best time to control hair fescue, because at that time hair fescue already just very healthy. They are almost have some seed coming up. That is not the point you use clethodim. You want to stop them growing for a season. You don't want to see them produce any seed heads to give any more baby hair fescue in the field. So if you do put it in post-emergency tank, you are not really targeting the hair fescue at that time. You may be looking at some others. But the really use of this product is to try to put it in your crop fields. So in the crop fields, the only limited few times you go to your field with your sprayer is probably monolinea, but try this timing. And it works very well if you mix with your first or second monolinea fungicide tank. I highlighted first there. That will be the timing I recommend. If you are only doing one, that'll be the only timing you do. But if you do two, I still think the first one will be better. Just get it out because the hair fescue, they look pretty nice and they can be managed anytime soon. And that will be adding into your, say, Proline or Swallowtail tank in the spring. Yeah, that would be my last slide. I really wish you a very successful blueberry season. I was going to use juicy, but successful blueberry season. Yeah, because we need water. Yeah, so that'll be the information I have from blueberry fields over the last little bit. And I know we still have many challenges and unknowns because blueberry field is just full of surprises every time you go in there. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
We're running tight on time right now with Hugh, but he's back this afternoon. So if you have questions, they can come forward for the afternoon session. And Hugh's around for lunch as well. So don't be afraid to nab him. He's happy to take questions there as well.